I broke two, the tib and the fib.
Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation.
Ladies and gentlemen, it seems there is a new kid on the block stealing my thunder. The one thing I am known for, besides being Craig Jones's brother, is that I savagely broke my leg in a Jiu Jitsu tournament. Sebastian Attard, you are taking everything I have worked for. This poor bastard broke his leg in the training room over in Austin, Texas. He did it in a way that was much cooler than me. And I brought this story up a few times on different episodes about me overcoming this injury. And I just wanted to tell the story from my point of view, because on social media, every fucking October, I get tagged in it. And I always say, I'm like, guys, I'm well aware that I broke my leg. I laid on the mats for a solid 90 minutes waiting for that fucking ambulance. Now, I was competing in the 2017 Pan-Pacific IBJJF Jiu Jitsu tournament. This is when I used to pay money to the BJJ Mafia to be able to compete for a chance to win a $6 gold medal. Now, as much shit as I give IBJJF, this is the biggest tournament in Oceania. And my plan was to compete in the pajamas, the gi, on the Friday, and then compete in the no gi on the Saturday, and then I believe the open weight was the Sunday. Now, Craig had won 4 golds at purple belt, and that was my goal, was to go out there and win 4 gold medals. I've been training super hard all year, and I'd moved to Absolute MMA St Kilda, so I was in a really good room training with some absolute savages. The week before, I'd been up to Coffs Harbour and I had won my weight division. Actually managed to beat 2 black belts as a purple belt, which I thought was pretty cool. Now I realise that doesn't really mean too much. But my plan was to go in and get 4 golds at Pan-Pacs. Now, my first match of the day, this was also a new weight class for me too. I'd been eating a lot of chicken and veggies and had managed to get up to super heavyweight. What I'd realised was that if I swapped powders and started having more protein, the weight would actually stay on. First match, I remember going out there and I grabbed hold of the guy, you know, we're in the pajamas so he can grab the gi grips, and I triangled him pretty quickly. And, you know, I felt good. I felt like I was on one. I was like, today's going to be a good day. And the next match, I think there was only 4 guys in my division. So the next match was for the gold. But obviously, it doesn't matter how many matches you have at a jiu-jitsu tournament. If you win gold, you sell it on social media like you've had 100 matches. Ended up facing this fella from Singapore. And I'd heard he was a judo black belt. And at the time, I was doing quite a bit of wrestling training, which makes me sick to think that I would do that. But you know what? I was also competing in the gi. So, you know, I was a different man back then. I remember going out and I grabbed hold of this guy's gi, grabbed his lapel, I believe they call it, to sit guard. And I sat guard, and my first match I did that, and the guy went straight into my guard. Now this guy, being a judo black belt, obviously wanted to throw me on my head, probably like a lot of people that I train with, but he didn't engage. And I stood back up, grabbed another solid gi grip on the lapel, and I sat back down. And I got him a little closer this time, but he stood back up. And I was like, fuck, this guy really wants me to fucking stand here. And as a guard player, someone who's quite confident in his closed guard, especially against blue belts and white belts, I thought, nah, I'm going to give this one more crack. Grabbed the lapel again, sat down. Now, what I didn't realise was this guy was thinking, he's going to do this again, and I'm just going to jump over his legs. Now, I'll take it back a step, right? 6 weeks before this injury happened, I was training with this unit, strong fella. I believe his name was Sam at Absolute. And at the time, we were working a lot of leg locks. And Craig had given me certain steps to defend the heel hook. Now, I remember he had me in an outside heel hook, and because I'm an idiot, he'd already gripped my toes and had the heel hook. But in my head, I was like, all right, what are the steps? I've got to straighten my foot and then clear the knee line and roll out. But when a guy who is very strong, and like this guy was super technical too, I'm not saying he was just strong, but like he had my toes clamped under his arm. And I remember I was like, all right, what did Craig say? I'll straighten my foot. As I straightened my foot, this clunk noise happened and my ankle dislocated, and he let go. He was a really nice guy. He was horrified. And when he let go, it clunked back in. I still remember the noise. It was fucking horrifying. And I remember standing up and walking around and tried to play it off like it was nothing. And he's like, bro, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'll be fine. And walked around a little bit, and then it really started to hurt. So, you know, at that time, I was walking everywhere. I didn't have a car in Melbourne. So I remember hobbling all the way home, barely being able to put any weight on it. I was like, fuck, I've done a number on myself here. And I had the Coffs Harbour comp, the Pan Packs, and then the week after was Grappling Industries. Now, like any smart man, I didn't do any rehab for that. I just bought a couple of rolls of tape and taped it up. And, you know, which is silly because Lachlan Giles was my head coach and one of the best physios in the country. And instead of reaching out to him for advice, I just bro scienced it, did some more bench press and kept training. Now, 3 weeks after that, I was in mount on a guy, and he elevated me, caught a heel hook again, and I remember my ankle clicking. Now, it hurt. It was quite a sharp pain and a little click, but I didn't, you know, like I said, I'm an idiot. So instead of rehabbing, I just put more tape on and I carried on. And, you know, I went up to Coffs Harbour, did well up there, gold in my division, placed fourth in the open weight, and I was feeling pretty confident. The ankle, I could tell, was weak, but I didn't think anything of it. So let's get back to the match. I had this guy's lapel. So as I've sat down, he's jumped. And now I don't know if you guys know this, but when someone's a super heavyweight, it might have even been ultra heavyweight, I can't remember. It was around, I was around 100 kilos, and I was a lighter guy in that division. And he's gone to jump. Super ultra heavyweights do not jump, they fall. And he landed on my shin. And what happened is, as he's landed on my shin, I've got quite long legs, 6'8" tall. He slid down and landed on my ankle. And what has happened is my ankle has dislocated, and the tib and fib, the tips, snapped. So Sebastian, I broke 2 bones. All right, you've only got 1. Stop stealing my bloody thunder. Now, that happened. Funny story was Craig was in the crowd, and someone was like, bro, your brother's hurt himself. And Craig's first reaction was like, oh, what's he, fucking broken a nail? And then he's seen me laying there, and I remember holding my calf, you know, like a fucking, I don't know, like a foot-long Subway. I'm eyeing it off, and my foot was just dangling. And the noise that it made, it was this like horrible crunch. it wasn't really a snap. It was a real dull crunch. And I just remember going, oh no, like I'm fucked. And Craig jumped over. He actually said to the guy, he goes, you're a super heavyweight. Why would you jump guard? But, that's just my little brother coming to my rescue. Lockie Giles, his wife Liv, jumped over. And, Lockie Giles held my leg up with all the weight for 90 minutes. I still remember beads of sweat dripping from his head. And, I could probably still close my eyes and tell you how many lights are on the ceiling of that sports centre where that tournament was. And look, I can't not throw some shade at IBJJF. This is the type of organisation they are. Their first aid guy, that's a pretty horrific injury, don't get me wrong, but his help that he offered was if I needed some tape, sports tape, for a broken leg. I'll put a picture up so you guys can see what I was dealing with, and I don't think tape would have helped. So there I am laying on the mats for 90 minutes while Craig tried to push my head back down because I kept wanting to look at it, and I was in a fair bit of pain, obviously, and it was, I had a lot of things going through my head at the time because my life was all over the shop, and I really wanted to do well. I wanted to finish my year off because I was about to have a baby. Now, Craig took a photo of it and sent it to Kit Dale. Now, Kit Dale stole all my clout. He posted that. Never tagged me. Didn't fucking tag me. And, God, I could have got a few followers from that, and that's, man, why do we do this, eh? We do Jiu Jitsu for the photos after class and any cool potential social media posts. I remember when the Ambos rocked up and they gave me 2 hits of morphine and the green whistle. And I remember saying to her, hey, I can stand up. And they're like, you can't stand up, buddy, just lay there. And the whole mats were shut down. Everybody was watching, and I heard some stories. There were people trying to take videos and pictures, and there was a guy, he's actually a UFC fighter. He actually knocked a couple of phones out of people's hands to say, pay some respect. And, I remember laying there, the whole mat was shut down. There were still other matches going on. To be honest, it was gi matches, so it was actually more painful to watch than the leg break itself. But yeah, I got put up on the bed, wheeled off, everybody was cheering. My mate, Beamsy, the sick cunt, runs across the mats and hands me a gold medal, because that match was for the gold medal. And he goes, I know you didn't win, mate, but that leg break, you get a gold medal. So I actually walked away with a gold medal and a silver medal from that tournament. I also had another mate run up to me and hand me a bag of weed cookies and a THC pen saying, I think you need this more than me. I remember getting into Ambo, flying to the hospital. Funny thing was, now I know Ambos don't just live at the hospital, but the hospital was a kilometre, just over a kilometre away. That was the most expensive Uber I've ever had. That was like $1,200 to go a kilometre. And I didn't even vomit in it. But got taken into emergency, and like I was high as a kite. And I remember I was pretty with it. And Craig kept telling me to settle down because I was dribbling so much shit. And I remember the nurses were there, and they were like, we've got to take your gi pants off. And shout out Atlas brand. I wouldn't let them cut the gi off because I was sponsored by Atlas at the time. And I was like, no, I just got this gi, it's brand new. I can't have you cutting the pants. And they were like, mate, we have to get the pants off so we can work on your leg. I'm like, you can't cut it. So the nurses and doctors were all talking, and they were trying to work out what they were going to put me under with. And I remember them saying 2 things. Should we use fentanyl or should we use ketamine? And me in my high state, which I have had a lot of experience in over the years, I yelled out, ketamine, it's not Saturday night, guys. And I remember the doctors and nurses looking quite shocked, and one of them was trying to hold back laughter. Craig's going, shut the fuck up. Spent a few days in hospital, had surgery, and while all this was going on, baby mama was 34 weeks pregnant. And this is the type of bloke Craig is. He calls her and says, hey, Adam has had a horrific injury at the Jiu Jitsu tournament. He has to get his leg amputated. She fucking freaks out, and he goes, haha, I'm just joking. And she relaxes, and he goes, but he did savagely break his leg, and he has to go get surgery. So anyway, I spent a few days in hospital. That is pretty much a blur because I had the bag of edibles and the pen, and any time they asked if I was in pain, obviously like any person, you say yes, 10 out of 10. So I lived on painkillers and weed for 3 days in the hospital. Had a lot of people come and visit me. I remember because I was a jiu-jitsu athlete that made no money, I hadn't been paying my phone bill, so anytime Craig turned up, I made him hotspot his internet for me. And then, had Lockie Giles, Liv come in to visit me. You know, Mikhail was there a lot. It was, got to feel the love. And my old lady called, and she's like, well, you've got to come back. And I'm like, I've just lived here for the last 12 months. I've got to say goodbye to all my friends. So I literally went back to Mikhail's apartment and spent the rest of the week on his couch. I think I flew back on a Friday. And I would get my crutches, walk over, smoke a piff, and then make my way back to the couch. And they gave me a huge bag of painkillers. I had an out-of-body experience on tramadol. And it was a very uncomfortable few days on that couch, but I got to say goodbye to all the friends that I made in Melbourne. Came back to Adelaide. I remember, when I was in the hospital, they were talking about removing the plates and the screws. When I said to them, I'm actually going to be going back to Adelaide, the two surgeons looked at each other and I was like, okay, and literally walked out the room. I've still got those 2 plates and 10 screws in my ankle. I don't know whether I'm meant to ever get them out. I've asked a few people, spoke to the physio, and they said, yeah, if it causes you, discomfort, get them out. I tell you what, anytime I walk down a ladder and clip my ankle on one of the rungs, or when someone's shin hits my plates, good God, it's tremendous pain. I had my little girl in December that year, so not that long after. And I remember the hospital we were at is in the most feral part of Adelaide, Elizabeth, and the northerners, that's out north. The northerners will say the south is feral, but that's God's country down there. And I remember I was too tight to pay for a park, and I was out wandering the streets on my crutches in a half cast, trying to find a free park, or walking to my car, and I was like, if anyone's going to jump me, it'll be now. Did all my physio, and at the 12-week mark, I got the moon boot off. And at one point, probably about 10 weeks in, my jiu-jitsu coach from Adelaide at the time, he took me down to M16 just to sort of get back on the mats and say hello to everybody. I couldn't do anything, but I got to be in a gym again, which was nice. 12 weeks, I got the moon boot off and was straight back to work. First job I had, I was crawling under flats at a university installing cables. So I was straight back into the hard yakka. I say hard yakka, that's what you tell your boss, but we take the piss. And 4 months after that, I was back on the mats. The first time I went on the mats, all I really did was put my gi on. I was still obviously mentally disabled. So I put the gi back on, did a couple of somersaults. That was liberating. And then, a little bit later, I caught up with Miles, someone I trust, and we had a couple of rounds, and then straight back into training. And I was very careful. I've never actually hurt that leg again, but I remember there was one point with a guy, Jamie Ison. He was the gym's first shit kicker. He was the first one that we all picked on. We've got other guys now, Jonathan Sutton, Caleb Burden, but Jamie was the OG. And I remember he put me in a toe hold, and this is probably, I don't know, six months after. And like, I never, ever have tapped to Jamie. I never want to. He put me in a move once, and I actually got a small tear in my trap, but I'll never tap to Jamie Ison. And he put me in this toe hold, and I remember looking at it, looking him in the eyes, and I was like, this cunt's going to go for it. And I managed to get out without him hurting it, and he went for it. But it was good for me mentally because I realised, all right, cool, we're back on here. 8 months, 3 weeks to the day. So I broke my leg on the 27th of October 2017. 8 months, 3 weeks later, I jumped back on the Jiu Jitsu mats to compete. That was on the 21st of July 2018. And it was a 8-man super fight show. And, I was in the heavyweight division. And I faced a guy who was 117 kilos. And that match didn't go my way. I got submitted, but to be able to know that I came back from an injury like that, it was very important to me. One, because, when the inevitable happens and my daughter hurts herself, I'll be able to say to her, hey, this is what your dickhead dad did, rolling around on the ground, pulling guard, and he came back. So, that was my journey from breaking my leg to back on the mats. It was pretty hard for the first, 6 weeks. I didn't even watch any jiu-jitsu. I didn't even want to think about it because, I missed it. And then I got into coaching. Probably when I started training again, Miles gave me an opportunity to coach at M16. And I've been going full blast since. It was pretty wild. And then it's funny, right? I said at the start, every October I get tagged in it. The photo goes viral again, right? And, I've seen a lot of comments. People are like, oh, I should have tap, nap, or snap, And I wish it was something cool. At least Sebastian's is fucking cool. He was throwing down with Luke Griffin, a big fella from the team we don't talk about over in Austin, Texas, and got his leg broken off of a fucking takedown. Much, much cooler than pulling guard in the gi. There was also a funny thing that happened. My friend's wife actually sent me a Facebook post once, and it was some guy in America pretending that was his leg. And I don't know, you've seen the toes in the picture, right? It's not a good looking foot. I'm not making any money selling feet pictures. And this guy pretended that he was me and that injury had happened. He'd made up some whole elaborate story. There were a bunch of comments on the post and it was bananas. And then I actually wrote on there, like when my mate's wife sent it to me, I was like, yo, that's actually my leg. And then I'll never forget, we Googled the Facebook user's name and he'd been arrested for dogfighting. And then he wrote, I can't remember if it was in a DM or it could have even been on the post, that basically in 3 days' time he was going to prison for dogfighting and he just wanted to have a bit of fun on social media. So I don't know why you would pretend that was your leg, but there's some cooked cunts out there. But yeah, that's my leg break journey. Like I said, I seen Sebastian get some traction, and mate, you only broke one bone, okay? All right, one bone. I broke two, the tib and the fib, the little knobs at the end, clean off, and I dislocated my ankle. So yeah. You would have thought I would have learnt not to pull guard anymore, but all I learnt was don't wear the gi, I blame the gi, not the Atlas gi. That was actually a very nice gi, but I blame the gi. And on that note, thank you for listening to this ramble about the horrific injury that I had in Jiu Jitsu.